Shabbat Shalom. This is Shabbat Metzora, and we have been reading from Vayikra, and also from Melachim Bet, and from Mark. And Parasha Metzora is a very interesting parsha. The reading is perhaps difficult for us to comprehend in these days of modern medicine and scientific understanding, but I hope that you've been reading through it despite the fact that perhaps it doesn't make a lot of sense to you, because obviously these were measures that were taken to provide a certain amount of purification, not only externally, but of course for the person. Metzora has been translated leper, but more correctly it means one who is diseased. So it covers a wide spectrum of probably mostly visible diseases. Metzora is usually read with Tatria, but this year, of course, we read Tatria last week, and they are read separately. This parsha continues themes from Tatria, which we remember from last week. We read of purification rites and the reintegration of the individual who has suffered from a highly contagious skin disease of some kind. This parsha also describes a malady that infects one's home. In modern terms, we might see this as a severe and insidious form of infestation of mold or mildew. And we know that, of course, that it's still something that people have to deal with at times, but we have different methods of doing that. We read of the ways in which the Kohen was instructed to go about purifying the house. And up until very recent times, that still would have been the process, getting rid of the infected or the affected materials with fire. That was really, during the times of plagues, that was really the only way they had of purifying the building. Our parasha concludes with the discussion of those who are tameh, who are ritually impure from menstrual blood and seminal emissions. These are normal and regular events in human life. Linguistically, the rabbis note that the word Metzora, which can be used to indicate a leper or one with a skin ailment, may also be tied to the Hebrew for one who gossips, Motzi Shem Ra. In Midrash Leviticus Rabbah, Tazarat is seen as a form of punishment for those who engage in gossip, Lashon Hara, literally evil tongue. Like Tazarat, gossip is highly contagious, and it may cause terrible damage to individuals, families, and institutions. I noticed on a program that I watch from time to time, Big Bang Theory, which some of you probably watch too, that they, Sheldon and Amy did an experiment about gossip, dropping in information that was false in this case, but which got around to the rest of the group. And basically they were trying to see how long it would take for this piece of information to move around. And it's remarkably quick, because not only are people apt to speak the gossip they've heard, but they also listen to gossip. So, although in this particular program, basically they were being amused by it, it isn't really very amusing. Here's just one example, probably one that you haven't heard of. In 1984, U.S. Secretary of Labor Raymond Donovan was indicted by the Bronx, New York District Attorney. He was charged with grand larceny and falsifying documents in connection with work that his former company had done with the New York Transit Authority. Well, 2.5 years later, he was finally acquitted of all the charges. But he remarked, "Which office do I go to get my reputation back?" Donovan's words illustrate the quandary that our society faces. We may believe we are in pursuit of information and supposedly truth, whether in the courtroom, newspapers, the internet, the Jewish community, or in our own homes and offices. But we often leave reputations damaged, even in cases where the individual in question has actually done nothing wrong. Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, more than 100 years ago, worried deeply about the power of language. And we should not worry about it, but we should be concerned. He observed that in our everyday speech, we can deliberately but casually pass on derogatory information, whether it's true or not. In response to what he saw as the proliferation of damaging and therefore forbidden speech in his Eastern European Jewish community, he published a book called Chafetz Chaim. In it, he classified 3 types of forbidden speech: Lashon Hara, Reklalut, and Motzi Shem Ra. All of these fed one way or another by the evil inclination. Lashon Hara might be described as truthful but derogatory and damaging information or statements made to another. Rekalut is reporting and peddling to someone what others have said or done against a person, which, even if not derogatory, can cause bad feelings and animosity. Motzi Shem Ra is slander, repeating false or even partially false, that false thing with the kernel of truth, malicious, derogatory information. Rabbi Kagan once observed one of his wealthy supporters taking great care in composing a telegram back in the day when they did that sort of thing. He was concerned that statements made about a certain person were very close to Lashon Hara. The Chafetz Chaim, as he came to be known, said to his contributor, "It looks like you're weighing every word of that telegram." "Indeed I am," replied the man. "Each word costs money." The Chafetz Chaim responded, "Then we should be as careful in our speech as we are when we are composing a telegram." Today we have phones, radio, TV, 24-hour news channels, the worldwide internet, and in all its permutations, with ever-increasing numbers of text messages. They're so quick and easy to send, blogs and tweets, and they are constantly bombarding us. And you know something? The easier it is to say it or send it, the more likely it is that something will be said or sent that is derogatory, inflammatory, damaging to another person. The town squire and the general store, which used to have been the the town square. The town square and the general store, that used to be the center of the community. And mostly what you heard had to do with your community. But this has been supplanted by a vast global village. We now know what somebody thinks about or has for breakfast thousands of miles away. All it takes is one strike of a computer key, and the entire world can know the latest news or fake news, and with it the latest scandal. Given the ease with which we can become partners in the proliferation of damaging and malicious information, some of it quite possibly untrue, it is appropriate for each one of us to study and restudy the words of the scriptures. This parashah should influence us not only to avoid forbidden speech, but also to focus on lashon tov, beneficial speech. What can you say that will build someone up, that will encourage them? That's what you should be thinking about. In a small town somewhere in Eastern Europe, 150 or so years ago, lived a nice man with a nasty problem. He talked too much about other people. Seemingly, he couldn't help himself. Whenever he heard a story about anybody that he knew, and sometimes about somebody he didn't even know, he just had to tell it to his friends. And they knew that he would always have the latest information. Since he was in business, he heard quite a lot of rumors and stories. He loved the attention that he got and was delighted when people laughed at the way he told what he considered to be his anecdotes. He sometimes embellished them with little details he invented to make them funnier and juicier. Other than that, he was really a pleasant, good-hearted man. He knew what he did was wrong, but it was too tempting, and in any case, most of what he told really happened, didn't it? Many of his stories were just innocent and entertaining, weren't they? One day, he found out something really strange, but true, about another businessman in town. Of course, immediately he felt compelled to share what he knew with his colleagues, who told it to their friends, who told it to people they knew, who told it to their wives, who spoke with their friends and their neighbors, and it went around town until the unhappy businessman, who was the main character in the story, heard it. He ran to the rabbi of the town, and he complained and wailed that he was ruined. Nobody would deal with him after this. His good name and his reputation were gone with the wind. Now the rabbi knew his congregants, and he decided to summon the man who loved to tell stories. If he was not the one who started this one, he might at least know who had. When the nice man with the nasty problem heard from the rabbi how devastated his colleague was, he felt truly sorry. He honestly had not considered that it was such a big deal to tell the story because it was true. The rabbi could check it out if he wanted. The rabbi sighed. True, not true. That really makes no difference. You just cannot tell stories about people. This is all Lashon Hara, slander. And it's like murder. You kill a person's reputation. He said a lot more. And the man who'd started the rumor now felt really bad and sorry. What can I do to make it undone? He sobbed. I will do anything you say. And the rabbi looked at him. He said, do you have a feather pillow in your house? Rabbi, I'm not poor. I have many of them. But what do you want me to do? Sell them? No, just bring me one. The man was mystified. But he returned a bit later to the rabbi's study with a nice fluffy pillow under his arm. The rabbi opened the window and handed him a knife. Cut it open. But Rabbi, here in your study, it will make a mess. Do as I say, said the rabbi, and the man cut the pillow. A cloud of feathers came out of it. They landed on the chairs, on the bookcases, on the clock, on the cat which jumped after them. They floated over the table, into the teacups, on the rabbi, on the man with the knife, and a lot of them flew out of the window in a big, swirling, whirling trail. The rabbi waited 10 minutes, and then he said to the man, now bring me back all the feathers and stuff them back into your pillow. All of them. Not one may be missing. The man stared at the rabbi in disbelief. Why, Rabbi, that's impossible. The ones here in the room, I might get most of them, but the ones that flew out of the window are simply gone. Rabbi, I can't do that. You know it. Yes, said the rabbi. That is how it is. Once a rumor, a gossipy story, a secret leaves your mouth, you don't know where it ends up. It flies on wings of the wind, and you never get it back. He ordered the man to sincerely apologize to the person about whom he had spread the rumor, true or not true. And that was difficult and painful, but it was the least he could do. The rabbi also ordered him to apologize to the people to whom he had told the story, making them accomplices in the nasty Lashon Hara game. And he ordered him to diligently study the commandments concerning Lashon Hara every day for a year, and then come back to him. And that is what the man did. Not only did he study the commandments, he talked about the importance of guarding one's tongue to all his friends and colleagues. And in the end, he became a nice man who overcame a nasty problem. Maybe you know somebody like that. What did the scriptures say about Lashon Hara? Rav Yaakov writes this to us. We all stumble in many ways. If someone does not stumble in what he says, he is a mature person who can bridle his whole body. If we put a bit into a horse's mouth to make it obey us, we control the whole body as well. Well, up to a point. And think of a ship. Although it's huge and it's driven by strong winds, we're talking about a sailing ship, Yet the pilot can steer it wherever he wants with just a small rudder. So too the tongue is a tiny part of the body, yet it boasts great things. See how a little fire sets a whole forest ablaze? The tongue is a fire, a world of wickedness. The tongue is so placed in our body that it defiles every part of it, setting ablaze the whole of our life, and it's set on fire by Gehenna itself. For people have tamed and continue to tame all kinds of animals and birds and reptiles and sea creatures. But the tongue, no one can tame. It is unstable and an evil thing, full of death-dealing poison. Pardon me. With it, we bless Adonai, the Father, and with it we curse people who were made in the image of God. Out of the same mouth comes blessing and cursing. Brothers and sisters, it isn't right for things to be this way. A spring doesn't send out both fresh and bitter water from the same opening, does it? Can a fig tree yield olives, or a grapevine figs? Neither does salt water produce fresh. Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him demonstrate it by his good way of life, by actions done in the humility that grows from wisdom. But if you harbor in your hearts bitter jealousy, selfish ambition, don't boast and attack the truth with lies. This wisdom is not the kind that comes down from above. On the contrary, it's worldly, unspiritual, demonic. From where there are jealousy and selfish ambition, there will be disharmony and every foul practice. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure, then peaceful, kind, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy, and peacemakers who sow seed in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. There's an old adage I'm sure you have all heard. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. There is nothing more false than this, the deception that words cannot cause harm. Anyone who has been at the receiving end of a bully's attention knows that words are as harmful as stones and as sharp as a knife. Rav Yaakov is only one in a long line of our prophets and sages who, in the name of God, decried the power of the tongue. This passage begins an extended reflection on the power that rabbis hold because of the might and damage and danger of words. It goes on to compare the power of the tongue to the destruction and proliferation of an out-of-control fire. Rav Yaakov says that not many should determine to be rabbis, a position he himself held in the Jerusalem Kehillah, because of the temptations of such an office. As has been said, the tongue, although a tiny part of the body, fed by the evil inclination, can lead us astray as easily as a rudder steers a ship straight into the rocks. As has been said, the tongue can ignite a raging inferno that no one can extinguish. Rabbis, as communal leaders, are called by God to shape communities of faith that reflect His holiness and glory. The kind of leaders Yaakov hopes for do not live above their congregants, but in the midst of them, sharing in their struggles, their sorrows, and their joys. They are to be living examples of faithful service. Yes, the tongue is like a fire, and its flames spread wherever it can find a source of fuel. Literal fires require oxygen. The fires ignited by the tongue feed on half-truths and fears, anxiety, on overestimation of one's own importance, and the errors of supposed opponents. How is it possible that with the same mouth we can sing praises to Hashem and curse those like ourselves that He created? The tongue can diminish others or build them up. It can help or crush hopes. Lashon Hara has a corrosive effect on both its speaker and its hearer. Those who engage in gossip, whether speaking it or hearing it, yes, Lashon Hara requires a recipient, are damaged by it. The destructive power of words is insidious and infective. The more we are inundated with it, the easier it is to be eroded by it. Rav Yaakov also reminds us that no relationship between human beings can fail to impact our relationship with Hashem. He viewed sin, suffering, and even illness as communal hardships just as much as they are individual concerns. None of us is independent. No one is an island, John Donne said in his poem. How can we face the eternal God of the universe if we are unable to righteously face one another? The half-truths, innuendos, and deceptions of gossip and backbiting are seductive. They lead us down paths of destruction and erode our relationship, not only with other people, but with Hashem. What if we were to turn our words and the use of our tongues to a single holy purpose? We need to begin by refusing to deny the destructive force our words can carry, and begin to, in the words my mother often used, say nothing if we can't say something positive. Here are some other statements from the scriptures. From Mishlei, a slanderer's words are tasty morsels. They slide right down into the belly. The tongue has the power over life and death. Those who indulge it must eat its fruit. A fool gives vent to all his feelings, but the wise, thinking of afterwards, stills them. Idle talk can pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise can bring healing. A knowledgeable person controls his tongue. A discerning person controls his temper. When words are many, sin is not lacking. So he who controls his speech is wise. He who guards his mouth preserves his life, but one who talks too much comes to ruin. A deceitful person stirs up strife, and a slanderer can separate even close friends. A gossip goes around revealing secrets, so don't get involved with a talkative person. With his mouth, the hypocrite can ruin his neighbor, but by knowledge, the righteous are delivered. In Tehillim, we read these words of wisdom. May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be acceptable in your presence, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer. May Adonai cut off all flattering lips and the tongue that speaks proudly, those who say, by our tongues we will prevail, our lips are with us, who can master us? God says, if someone slanders another in secret, I will cut him off. Haughty eyes and proud hearts, I cannot abide. Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from deceiving talks. I will watch how I behave so that I won't sin with my tongue. I will put a muzzle on my mouth whenever the wicked confront me. And from the Ketuvim Meshakim, we have Rav Yeshua's words. Moreover, I tell you this, on the day of judgment, people will have to give account for every careless word they have spoken. For by your own words you will be acquitted, and by your own words you will be condemned. Yaakov says, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, let every person be quick to listen, but slow to speak and slow to get angry. Shimon Kifa wrote, for whoever ever wants to love life and see good days must keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Rav Yeshua said, of those who speak evil of others, you belong to your father Hasatan, and you want to carry out your father's desires. From the start, he was a murderer, and he's never stood by the truth because there's no truth in him. When he tells a lie, he is speaking in character because he is a liar, indeed, the inventor of the lie. Rav Shaul, therefore, stripping off falsehood, let everyone speak truth with his neighbor, because we are intimately related to each other as parts of a body. Let no harmful language come from your mouth, only good words that are helpful in meeting the need, words that will benefit those who hear them. And I think that's a good test, don't you? Is what you're saying going to benefit those who hear? Yaakov says, stop speaking against each other. Whoever speaks against a brother or judges a brother is speaking against Torah and judging Torah. And if you judge Torah, you are not a doer of what Torah says. Rav Yeshua, the good person, produces good things from the store of good in his heart, while the evil person produces evil things from the store of evil in his heart. For his mouth speaks of what overflows from his heart. And finally, from Rav Shaul, also out of place are obscenity and stupid or coarse language. Instead, you should give thanks. Lashon hara, as I've said, literally means evil tongue. This is the term used for derogatory speech about another person, speaking something negative, even if it's truthful, about a person or a group for the purpose of causing harm. This is different from defamation of character, which is the use of falsehood against another person. Defamation is Motzi Shem Ra, spreading a bad name, which consists of untrue remarks or slander. The act of gossiping is rekulut, regardless of the method of communication, whether it's verbal, on the phone, by text or email, in a letter, all of the above are against the commandments of God and result when the evil inclination, which we all have, gains control of our tongues. Will disease and ill health follow acts of gossip, defamation, slander, or lashon hara? In our past, God has used Tazarat for this purpose. We have one of the key examples is Miriam, the sister of Moshe and a prophet. It's certainly possible that God could use this again. But whether or not we experience this sort of discipline from God, we are commanded to guard our tongues against loose speech, false speech, gossip, and tale-bearing. The best way to defeat the evil inclination is to endeavor to find good things to say about others and to count our words very carefully when we have something negative to relate. I'm sure you've all heard it said, make sure your words are sweet, for someday you may have to eat them. May each of us not only avoid lashon hara, Motzi Shem Ra, and rekalut. May we seek to find encouraging, positive things to say to one another and about one another, so that our tongues might be used with wisdom and for blessing. And may you be blessed in this Shabbat and through the week ahead. Shabbat Shalom.